I stared at the steaming cup of coffee on the table. The familiar aroma was there, but today something about it felt wrong, making me hesitate. Beside me, my stepfather Gary leaned against the kitchen counter, carefully observing my every move. "Drink up, Logan. It'll help you stay sharp for your interview," he said in a gruff voice, smiling, but his eyes were cold as ice. "My name is Logan Harper, 28 years old, still living with my mom and stepfather in Helena, Montana. Not ideal, I know, but sometimes life doesn't go as planned. After graduating with a communications degree from Montana State University, I spent 3 years gaining experience and building my portfolio, and today I was finally about to chase a dream I'd had since college, interviewing for the marketing coordinator position at Mountain Ridge Gear, the top outdoor gear company I'd admired for years. I adjusted my tie again, trying to hide the tension tightening my chest as I felt Gary's gaze drilling into me like a predator sizing up its prey. "Thanks, I'll take it to go," I said casually, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside unease curled up like smoke. The moment I picked up the cup, it felt oddly heavy, almost as if I were holding something dangerous rather than a drink. Gary stood there, arms crossed, staring at me with a challenging look. "Big day. Hope nothing gets in your way," he said slowly, stressing each word like a veiled threat. His half-smile carried no warmth. Gary was the old-school type, a skilled mechanic who prided himself on being a realist, often scoffing at anything related to technology or media. He married my mom 5 years ago and never missed a chance to mock my career choice. 4 years of college just to design silly ads, he'd sneer. Back in my day, we made our living with sweat, not keyboards. I'd gotten used to his jabs, but today felt different. His voice, his eyes, the coffee, all of it set every alarm bell in me ringing. It felt like an invisible current running down my spine, warning me of danger. I grabbed my portfolio case and made a quick exit. Mom had already left for her early nursing shift, leaving just me, Gary, and that suspicious cup of coffee. As soon as I got a few blocks away, I pulled into a gas station. Something deep inside me urged me to check. Popping the lid, I froze. The coffee was darker than it should have been, almost black, with an odd oily film floating on top. Without hesitation, I dumped it straight into the trash, my heart pounding so hard it echoed in my ears. This wasn't the first time I had a bad feeling about Gary. 2 weeks earlier, I had found an unmarked pill bottle in his old pickup while searching for jumper cables. From the shape and feel, I recognized them as heavy-duty sleep aids, the kind strong enough to knock someone out for hours. I had quietly put it back and said nothing at the time. But now, sitting at a red light, everything clicked into place. Gary wasn't just disapproving. He was actively trying to sabotage me. Piece by piece, the signs connected into a grim picture. He didn't want me to succeed. He didn't want me to leave. Maybe, all along, I had been a thorn in his side, a young man intruding into the life he thought he could fully control. I used to think Gary was just old-fashioned and cranky, but now, I saw it clearly. He was willing to do anything to keep me under his thumb. Checking my watch, I realized I still had time to grab a real coffee before the interview. I pressed down on the gas pedal, making myself a promise. No one, not Gary, not a suspicious cup of coffee, not even my own fear, was going to steal this chance from me. I pulled into a small cafe on the corner, ordered a hot Americano, and sat down by the window. Outside, gusts of cold wind rattled the windows, and heavy gray clouds drifted across the Helena sky. The metallic bitterness of Gary's coffee still lingered in my memory, like a ghost. I wrapped my hands around the fresh coffee, feeling the warmth seep into my fingers as I tried to push away the memories I had long ignored. All the little things, once dismissed as accidents, now wove together into a heavy net. A month ago, before a big video interview with a major communications firm in Billings, I had double-checked my alarm. Yet the next morning, it remained silent, like someone had turned it off while I slept. I blamed myself, thinking mistakes happen. Another time, while finalizing my project files for Mountain Ridge gear, my design folder vanished without a trace. No viruses, no hacks, just gone. I stayed up all night, recreating everything from scratch. And then there was the Wi-Fi. Right before a Zoom interview, our internet crashed completely. I had to rush to a cafe and use a hotspot to salvage the meeting. When I returned, Gary sat on the couch, casually shrugging. Probably a solar flare. Tech's never reliable. Back then, it annoyed me. Now, it made me furious. It wasn't coincidence. It was deliberate sabotage. I took a slow sip of the new coffee, letting the heat calm the trembling anger inside me. Every time I thought of Gary, I felt that same creeping darkness, like fine dust in the air. Unseen, but suffocating. Remembering the pill bottle in his truck made the chill in my bones deepen. No label, scratched up plastic, a few white pills clinking inside. I didn't need a lab test to recognize the truth. Back then, I had been too soft, too unwilling to believe a man who once helped me fix my first car would ever try to hurt me. But now, after everything, I was no longer naive. Gary's eyes that morning still haunted me, watchful, eager, counting down the seconds until I stumbled. I gripped the coffee cup tightly, my nails digging into the paper sleeve, a wave of helpless rage crashing through me. I couldn't prove what he had done to the coffee. I had no surveillance cameras, no chemical analysis, but I had something stronger, the undeniable truth screaming in my gut. And I knew, without a doubt, if I had faltered today, if I missed that interview, Gary wouldn't have been surprised. Maybe he would have even been satisfied, seeing me trapped once more in a cycle of failure and dependence. But not this time. I checked my portfolio one last time, took a deep breath, and stood up, half a cup of clean coffee still in hand. The clock on the cafe wall read 8:45 a.m. My interview was at 9:30. I still had time to arrive early, settle my nerves, and walk into that room with everything I had. Before leaving the cafe, I glanced at my phone screen. No texts, no missed calls from Gary. Part of me felt relieved. Part of me couldn't help but wonder, what else did he have up his sleeve? Pushing open the cafe door, I stepped out into the biting wind. But this time, I didn't shiver. I felt more awake than ever. Betrayal can break you. Or it can be the catalyst that sets you free. It shatters illusions, strips away masks, and leaves behind one undeniable truth. Either you stand and fight, or you get crushed. I chose to fight, and I swore to myself with everything I had. Today would be the day everything changed. I parked my car in front of the glass office building of Mountain Ridge Gear, taking a deep breath to steady the chaos raging inside me. In my hand, the Americano from the corner cafe was still warm, a small comfort against the undercurrent of emotions. Pushing through the revolving door, I entered the bright main lobby. The scent of pine wood and leather from the displayed hiking gear hung in the air, stirring memories of camping trips with my mom when I was little. That was when I knew I wanted to work connecting people to nature, not just through products, but through stories that truly resonated. A young receptionist smiled at me. "Logan Harper, right? You have an appointment with the marketing department at 9:30. "Yes," I replied, handing her the confirmation card. "Please have a seat. Someone will be out to meet you shortly," she said, gesturing toward the seating area. I sat down, portfolio resting on my lap. Instead of reviewing it, I closed my eyes and focused on my breathing. In this moment, Gary, the dark coffee, the sleepless nights wrestling with doubt, they all faded away. There was only me, one opportunity, and the determination not to let anything or anyone drag me down again. "Mr. Harper?" a man's voice called. I opened my eyes and stood. A man in a gray shirt and khaki pants, with an open, friendly face, extended his hand firmly. "I'm Chris Matthews, Marketing Director. Come with me." We walked down a wide hallway lined with posters of Mountain Ridge's successful campaigns, smiling faces in snowy landscapes, groups of friends camping by shimmering lakes at sunset. My heart raced. But it was excitement now, not fear. The interview took place in a cozy conference room, with windows looking out toward the snow-capped Helena Mountains. 3 people sat across from me. Chris, a woman in a burgundy blazer, and an older man with reading glasses. "We were really impressed with the mock fall campaign you submitted," Chris began, flipping through the materials. "You clearly have a deep understanding of the customer." I smiled, resting my hand lightly on my portfolio. "I believe marketing isn't just about selling products. It's about telling stories that customers want to be part of." They nodded, and the questions started flowing, about event planning skills, market data analysis, times I'd faced challenges and turned things around. I answered smoothly, pulling examples from past freelance projects, and even suggesting improvements to a few of Mountain Ridge's older campaigns. Near the end, the woman in the burgundy blazer smiled thoughtfully, resting her chin on her hand. "If you're hired, what would be your biggest goal for your first year?" I met their eyes without hesitation. "To build campaigns that don't just sell products, but inspire customers to live every outdoor moment to the fullest. And more importantly, to show that Mountain Ridge isn't just a brand, it's a part of their life's adventure." The room was silent for a beat, then Chris nodded slowly, his expression thoughtful. "We still have a few more candidates to interview," he said finally. "But Logan, thank you for coming in. We're really impressed." I shook their hands one by one, maintaining my composure, but as I stepped back into the hallway, my feet practically floated above the ground. Part relief, part the overwhelming sense that today I had laid the first stone for a brand new future. I was walking toward the elevator when my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Logan, this is Chris Matthews. We've made our decision immediately. Welcome to Mountain Ridge Gear. See you Monday." I froze, heart pounding. A surge of triumph flooded my body. I clenched my fist tightly and whispered to myself, "I did it. I actually did it." Stepping outside the building, I looked up at the pale gray sky. The early winter wind whipped against my face, but this time, it felt refreshing. In my pocket, my phone buzzed again with the confirmation text. I pulled it out and smiled to myself. Somewhere across town, Gary was probably sitting in the kitchen, waiting for a phone call that would never come. A stumble he had so desperately hoped for. But instead, today, I stood tall. And this was just the beginning. When I pushed open the door at home, the late afternoon light spilled across the living room, casting everything in a dim golden hue. Mom sat on the couch, her face tight with worry, hugging her knees. Gary looked nothing like his usual self. He was curled up in the battered recliner, his face ghostly pale, a plastic bucket between his knees, streaked with vomit. The sharp, sour smell of stomach acid filled the air, making me wrinkle my nose. "Logan!" Mom jumped up when she saw me, tears sparkling in her eyes. "You're back. How did the interview go?" I forced the storm inside me down and gave a small nod. "I got the job, Mom. I start Monday." Her face lit up instantly. She ran to hug me tightly, as if afraid to let go. Over her shoulder, I glanced at Gary. He was sweating profusely, glaring at me with a mixture of hatred and something darker. Fear. "Congratulations," Gary hissed through gritted teeth before bending over the bucket again. Mom followed my gaze, her voice dropping low. "Gary's been sick all day. He said it must have been something from the diner he ate at yesterday." I tightened my grip on my portfolio strap, the truth slicing through my mind like a razor. Yesterday's breakfast? No. Gary hadn't eaten anything this morning except a cup of coffee he made for me. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Everything snapped into focus. Gary had prepared that coffee with the intention of sabotaging my interview, but since I hadn't drunk it, the trap he set had sprung back onto him, a brutal justice of his own making. Mom carried the bucket away, while I stood silently in the middle of the living room, every nerve alert. Gary lifted his head, his bloodshot eyes flickering with both fear and fury. "Good thing you didn't drink it," he rasped, voice barely a whisper. I stepped closer, stopping just a few feet away. Looking at his defeated, disheveled form, I no longer saw the bully he once was. only a broken man, ensnared by his own deceit. Yeah, I said quietly, just loud enough for him to hear. Good thing. We stood there, staring at each other in suffocating silence. No more words needed. The truth lay naked between us. That night, after Gary dragged himself to bed, Mom sat at the kitchen table, her eyes rimmed red with worry. I poured her a cup of hot tea and sat across from her. Don't you think this whole thing is a little strange? I asked, keeping my voice gentle. She sighed, turning the cup slowly between her hands. I don't know, Logan. Maybe he really did get food poisoning. I hesitated, then decided not to force the brutal truth on her all at once. She had already endured enough. But deep inside, the pieces of Gary's lies were fitting together too perfectly to ignore. That night, after the house fell into heavy silence, I slipped into my room and opened the small drawer by my bed. The unmarked bottle I had found in Gary's truck still lay there, a cold, silent reminder. I twisted the cap gently, and a sharp chemical smell wafted out. It was definitely the same substance that had been mixed into the coffee that morning. Carefully, I closed the bottle and pushed it deeper into the drawer. Behind Gary's calm exterior lay a disgusting scheme that I had narrowly escaped. The thought sent a chill down my spine. But no, I had avoided it. And now, I knew I had to be more cautious. Not just to protect myself, but to protect Mom, the woman who had sacrificed everything for me, who had no idea that the person sitting at the same table with her was the real danger. I lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. In the thick darkness, I made a vow to myself. Gary would never get another chance to hurt us again. And deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. The next morning, I sat in the kitchen staring intently at my laptop screen while Mom brewed coffee. The dim autumn light slid through the thin curtains, making the room feel even heavier. Mom, I spoke up, my voice soft but firm. We need to talk. She turned around, coffee cup in hand, her eyes cautious. About Gary. I nodded. There was no reason to stay silent anymore. Have you ever noticed, I began, that every time I had a big interview or project, something always went wrong? Mom frowned but didn't interrupt. I continued, my voice growing stronger. My alarm would mysteriously turn off. Files from my portfolio disappeared from my laptop. Our Wi-Fi would crash right before important video calls. And yesterday, the coffee Gary gave me, it smelled off. I didn't drink it. After that, he got sick. Kind of a big coincidence, don't you think, Mom? She stood there, the coffee cup frozen halfway to her lips, her eyes widening in shock. I reached into my pocket and gently placed the small bottle on the table between us. The scratched plastic had no label, and a few white pills rattled inside. I found this in Gary's truck, I said. No label, but from the smell and texture, it's most likely strong sedatives. I suspect he crushed some into my coffee yesterday morning. Mom visibly paled. She pulled out a chair and sat across from me, her hands trembling. Logan, she whispered, her voice cracking. Are you sure? I nodded slowly, my eyes locked on her pained expression. I can't prove it immediately, but when you add up all the small things, you see it too, right? Mom gripped her coffee cup tightly, her knuckles turning white. She said nothing, but I knew she was piecing the memories together, and the truth was becoming impossible to ignore. And that's not all, I said, taking a deep breath. I suspect Gary's been stealing money from you. Her gaze shot straight into mine, full of shock. What money? Your savings, the joint account you share with Gary. Mom shook her head, her voice tight. He said he would manage it. I trusted him. Let's check it now, Mom, I suggested. If there's nothing wrong, then fine, but if there is... I didn't even have to finish the sentence. Mom stood up, grabbed her phone and laptop. We logged into the bank account she hadn't touched for a long time, trusting Gary's promises to handle the finances. When the statement loaded, the silence in the kitchen grew deafening. The balance was far lower than she thought. My eyes scanned the transaction history. For the past 3 years, there were consistent small withdrawals, each between $200 and $600, cleverly kept below the bank's automatic notification threshold. Nearly $19,800 had vanished. I clenched my fist under the table. Mom covered her mouth with a trembling hand, her eyes welling with tears. "This can't be." "He was careful," I said quietly. "Not big chunks at once. Slowly, so you wouldn't notice." Mom leaned back in her chair, staring at the screen like it was something she didn't recognize. I wanted to hug her, but I knew she needed to face the truth on her own terms first. "Logan?" she choked out after a long moment. He took advantage of me." I nodded, my voice softening. "But you still have time to change everything. It's not too late." She sat silently, her trembling hands resting on the table, her head bowed. After a moment she lifted her face, and in her eyes I saw a spark of determination I hadn't seen in years. "I'm freezing the account today," she said firmly, "and I'm contacting a lawyer. I won't let someone like him ruin my life any longer." I smiled, a bittersweet but hopeful smile. Outside, the wind howled, sending golden leaves skittering across the windows, as if cheering silently for her. Inside me, a firm belief grew. This time, Mom wouldn't have to fight alone. And Gary, with all the harm he had caused, would soon face consequences he couldn't escape. That afternoon, Mom changed into simple clothes, tied her hair back, and quietly left the house under Gary's suspicious stare from the couch. I watched her go, my chest tight. She headed straight to the main branch of Helena's Central Bank, where I had already scheduled an appointment with an account specialist. About 3 hours later she came back, looking so resolute it even surprised me. "All joint accounts are frozen," she said, her voice steady. "I opened a new account. My paycheck and the savings I have left are transferred there." I nodded, feeling as if a giant weight had lifted off my chest. "What about Gary?" I asked quietly. Mom pressed her lips together, her eyes sharper than I'd ever seen. "I have an appointment with a family lawyer on Monday. I'm filing for divorce." I squeezed her hand gently, saying nothing. In that moment, we understood each other without needing words. The atmosphere at home shifted immediately. Gary sensed Mom's coldness, but he still tried to act normal. He had no idea that every move she made was slipping out of his control. That night, I quietly searched online for rental listings near Mountain Ridge Gear. I knew I couldn't stay here much longer. My presence only made everything riskier now. Within a few hours, I found a small studio in North Helena, a simple but cozy place just a 10-minute drive from the office. Savings from freelance gigs and my signing bonus from Mountain Ridge were enough to cover the deposit. The next morning, I drove to meet the landlord. He was an older man with a friendly demeanor, and he seemed pleased when I told him about my stable new job. "We like renting to young folks who keep things in good shape," he said, handing me the lease. "As long as you don't throw wild parties, you can move in any time." I chuckled and signed without hesitation. "I just need a quiet place to work, sir." Holding the new keys in my hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Like I finally owned something for myself. A life no longer weighed down by darkness. That evening, I returned home, my mind full of plans for the future. I would pack lightly, only what I truly needed, leaving behind anything stained with painful memories from this place. Gary was tinkering with his old pickup in the garage when I stepped inside. He glanced at me, suspicion flashing in his eyes. "Where you headed?" he asked, his voice rough. I gave a dry smile. "Getting ready for my new life." He sneered like he wanted to snap back, but in the end, he just threw the wrench onto the floor and turned away. Inside, Mom was sitting at the kitchen table, sorting through her personal documents into an old leather folder. She looked up when she saw me, her eyes steady with a strength I hadn't seen before. "I found a place," I said, sitting beside her. "I'll be moving Saturday." Mom smiled sadly but nodded. "I'm happy for you, Logan. I want you to live your own life, not stay here suffering any longer." I squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth and determination flowing through her pulse. "I won't be far," I reassured her. "We'll always be close, even if we're not under the same roof." The room grew heavier as Gary's footsteps echoed from the garage. We fell silent, listening. He paced through the house, but he wasn't the proud lion he used to pretend to be. Now he was just a beaten man, tasting the bitterness of losing control. That night, I sat in my room, packing the last of my belongings into cardboard boxes, shirts for the new job, my laptop, and marketing sketches I had drawn through countless long nights. Each item I packed felt like cutting away a heavy part of my past, making space for a new future waiting ahead. In my jacket pocket, I kept the key to my new apartment. Every now and then, I'd pull it out and turn it between my fingers, reminding myself that freedom was close. And this time, no matter what tricks Gary tried, I wouldn't back down. A new chapter was opening, and I, Logan Harper, was ready to walk through that door. The night before I moved out, Helena's skies broke into a freezing rain, heavy drops pounding against the roof like drums marking an inevitable confrontation. I was sealing up the last box when I heard the garage doors slam shut. My bedroom door flew open, and Gary, still in his grease-stained work clothes, blocked the exit. The dim yellow light caught the angry veins pulsing at his temples. "So you're really leaving," he growled, his voice a mix of exhaustion and bitterness. "Running off to play some marketing games, leaving your mom all alone." I placed the last book in the box and slowly turned to face him. "Mom's not alone, she's stronger than you think." Gary let out a dry, brittle laugh that bounced off the walls. "You think you're so smart, huh? A kid like you? No real experience, no guts. You'll be out on the street before you even get your first paycheck." I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. "Maybe," I said. "But at least I stood up on my own. Unlike you, who needs dirty tricks to bring others down?" Gary's eyes darkened. He stepped closer, the smell of sweat and engine oil hitting me. "You have no idea who you're dealing with, kid," he snarled. "One call, a few whispers in the right ears, I could ruin you before you even get started." I stared straight into his eyes, not moving an inch. "Is that so?" I smirked. "Then how much time do you think you have left before you're exposed?" Gary blinked, confusion flickering. I stepped forward slowly, pulling a small bottle from my pocket, rattling the pills inside. "You know what this is?" I said, holding up the bottle just enough for him to see. No label, no explanation. Just enough to make someone miss the biggest day of their life, and never know why. Gary's face drained of color, his lips pressing into a hard line. I continued, my voice colder. "Or maybe we should talk about the nearly 20 grand missing over the past 3 years. Small enough withdrawals to avoid flags. The transaction history is backed up. And Mom? She spent the afternoon at the bank with a lawyer." Gary stumbled back a step, his fists clenching so tightly his knuckles turned white. You have no proof." I let out a short, sharp laugh. "Proof?" I said. "You won't have to worry about that. The bank and the police will handle it." The silence between us was crushing. Outside, the rain hammered harder, the wind howling through the cracks like the soundtrack to our silent war. Gary backed away further, the bravado draining from his face, replaced by raw fear. "Listen, Logan," he said, dropping his voice, trying to sound reasonable. "We can settle this within the family. No need to blow it all up." I gripped the box handle tighter, fury boiling in my veins. "This stopped being a family matter a long time ago," I said coldly. "Last time you tried to mess with my life, you almost cost me everything. There won't be a next time." Without waiting for his reply, I walked past him, dragging the box into the hallway. Behind me, I heard him slam his fist into the wall and hiss in rage. But I didn't look back. Passing through the living room, I saw Mom sitting on the couch, clutching her folder tightly to her chest. As I approached, she stood up and gave me a tight, silent hug. "Go, Logan," she whispered. "Start your life. I'll be fine." I nodded, too overwhelmed to say more. Stepping out into the rain, I loaded the box into the trunk, then turned for one last look at the house. A place filled with memories both painful and precious, now just a stopover on the way to something better. Gary stood hidden behind the curtains, his pale face barely visible in the dim light. I started the engine and drove into the misty downpour, feeling every drop of freedom soak into my skin. Behind me, one chapter closed. Ahead, a new journey waited. And this time, I would be the one writing the story. 3 days after I left, my phone rang while I was unpacking in my small studio apartment. Seeing Mom's name flash on the screen, I answered immediately. "Logan?" Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from overwhelming emotion. "The police just left." I set down the box and listened in silence. "I worked with the bank and provided all the statements and signature samples," she said. "The forensic audit confirmed multiple forged withdrawals, and when they searched Gary's garage and bedroom, they found 2 more bottles of unlabeled sedatives." My chest tightened. "Was he there?" I asked. She took a deep breath. "Yes. The police caught him trying to pack up his things. They handcuffed him right there in front of me." I closed my eyes for a moment, picturing it. Gary, once lounging arrogantly in the living room, now hunched over, hands shackled behind his back, with nowhere left to run. "Are you okay?" I asked, my voice low. "For the first time in years," she whispered. "I feel truly free." As a light drizzle misted the window outside, I gripped my phone tightly, letting the rush of emotions quietly crash over me. "You did the right thing," I said softly. "You're stronger than anyone I've ever known." After we hung up, I got a text from Aunt June, Mom's sister, who lived about 30 minutes outside Helena. It was short and sweet. "Your mom's safe here. Don't worry." I smiled, feeling as though a weight I had carried for years had finally been lifted. That evening, I sat alone in my new apartment, surrounded by unopened moving boxes. Outside the window, the soft yellow lights of the city flickered in the rain. In my hand, the apartment key felt cold, but my heart was strangely warm. Finally, after everything, Mom and I had both stepped out of the darkness. The next morning, as I was enjoying my first cup of coffee in my tiny but truly mine kitchen, another call came through. It was from the detective handling Gary's case. "We've officially arrested Mr. Gary Edwards on charges of signature forgery, financial abuse, and unlawful possession of prescription drugs," the detective said firmly. "He's currently being held pending his hearing." I thanked him, then sat there for a while, the coffee untouched in my hand. Gary, with all his scheming and manipulation, was finally paying the price. The silence that once felt threatening had finally lifted. No more sneaky sabotage. No more fake concern, hiding a dagger in the back. He couldn't escape what he sowed. That afternoon, Mom sent me a photo. In it, she and Aunt June were standing on the front porch, hand in hand, their faces lit up with simple joy. Mom's hair was tousled by the wind, but her eyes sparkled with a kind of light I hadn't seen in years. Real life. Beneath the photo, Mom had written, "We won, Logan. Thank you for never giving up." I stared at the screen for a long moment before slowly typing my reply. "We deserve this new beginning, Mom. And this time, no one can take it from us." That night, in my little apartment, I played my favorite music and opened the window to let the scent of rain fill the space. Each raindrop tapping the windowsill felt like a new heartbeat, steady, strong, and free. It was now just a shadow in the past. And Mom and I, we had truly reclaimed the lives we deserved. And this was only the beginning. 3 weeks after Gary's arrest, I started my new job at Mountain Ridge Gear. On my first morning, I woke up in my small apartment, sunlight slanting through the thin curtains, casting warm streaks across the worn wooden floor. Freedom filled every breath I took. I threw on my leather jacket, grabbed my bag, and stepped outside, crossing the streets of Helena cloaked in autumn's golden leaves. My heart raced, but this time it was from excitement, not fear. A true, new beginning was opening up before me. Mountain Ridge Gear's headquarters sat near the northern edge of the city. A sturdy granite building radiating the spirit of adventure the brand was known for. Walking into the bright lobby, I greeted the receptionist, received my brand new employee badge, and quickly melted into the busy flow of the workday. The marketing department was on the 3rd floor, walls covered with winter campaign posters, tents, backpacks, and snowboards. Chris Matthews, the department head, greeted me with a firm handshake when I arrived. "We have high hopes for you, Logan," he said, smiling warmly. "You're not just another new hire. You're part of Mountain Ridge's next chapter." I smiled back, feeling determination fill my chest. I wasn't going to waste this opportunity. The first few weeks flew by in a blur of hard work and excitement. I dove headfirst into designing the endless winter campaign for the new collection. Ideas that were once laughed at were now embraced and nurtured. Every evening, returning to my small apartment, I made time to call Mom. She had settled comfortably at Aunt June's little farm, about 30 miles outside Helena. Her voice over the phone sounded lighter, freer. No longer burdened by the worries that had weighed her down for years. "I've recovered about 70% of my savings," she announced during one call, "and I've decided to use it for something I've always dreamed of." "A coffee shop?" I guessed, smiling. "Exactly," she laughed, sounding like a young girl tasting freedom for the first time. "Right in the center of town. A small, cozy place. I'm calling it Morning Bloom." I pictured her behind the counter, brewing fragrant coffee under a sunlit space, and my heart warmed at the thought. As for Gary, word spread quickly through our small community. After his hearing, he received 3 years probation and was ordered to repay the stolen money. The condition: he had to leave Helena and stay away from our family. No one knew exactly where he went. Rumor had it he moved to a small town near the Wyoming border, doing manual labor jobs and keeping his head down. I didn't feel satisfaction, just a quiet sense of peace. Everyone eventually faces the consequences of their choices. One Sunday afternoon, with work at Mountain Ridge Gear falling into a good rhythm, I drove out to visit Mom. Through the car windows, the late-season cornfields stretched endlessly under a flawless sky. Morning Bloom appeared after a bend in the road, a small redwood building with a teal sign glowing under the sunlight. On the porch, Mom was arranging flowers in glass jars, her hair tied up, her face beaming. "Welcome to my new world," she called out when she saw me. I stepped forward and hugged her tightly. The scent of coffee mixed with lavender flowers filled the air, soothing my soul. Inside the cafe there were simple wooden tables and chairs, walls adorned with hand-painted artwork and photos of Mom when she was young, her smile pure, her eyes full of dreams. "I'm proud of you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. Mom squeezed my hand and whispered, "We made it through everything together, Logan." That afternoon I sat by the window, watching sunlight dance across the old wooden table, a steaming cup of coffee in front of me. No more shadows, no more fear, only peace and hope. For the first time in a long time, it felt like life was finally smiling at me. And this time, I would never let go. One Sunday morning, with early autumn sunlight still misting the rooftops of Helena, I packed a bottle of water, a sandwich, and one special item into my backpack, the old ceramic mug. The same one from that fateful morning when Gary handed me the special coffee. That mug had long symbolized all the pain, betrayal, and struggles I had endured. I had kept it with me all this time, as a silent reminder. But now, I knew I didn't need it anymore. I drove out of the city, heading south toward the towering Sapphire Mountains. The winding road climbed higher, flanked by whispering pines. Inside me, a feeling of release grew stronger with every curve. I chose the trail up Blackbird Peak, the place where Mom and I had camped when I was a kid, where I once promised myself that one day I would stand at the top as the best version of myself. The cold wind lashed my face, but I didn't feel cold. Every step up the rugged trail felt like a quiet goodbye to fear, scars, and the dark days behind me. When I reached the summit, I stopped and dropped my backpack onto the biggest rock. Before me, the entire Helena Valley stretched wide to over. Tiny rooftops, weaving roads, and in the distance, the silver shimmer of the Missouri River under the sun. I sat down and pulled out the old mug. A small crack ran down its side, the stains of time now impossible to scrub away. I turned it slowly in my hands, my fingers brushing over each scratch, like saying goodbye to a chapter I'd finally closed. That day, if I had drunk that coffee, everything might have been different. Maybe I would never have gotten the chance to work at Mountain Ridge Gear, never lived in my own little apartment, never seen Mom smiling under the golden light of her cafe. But I had trusted my instincts. I had kept walking, even when my legs were shaking. And now, I stood exactly where I had once dreamed of. Whole. I took a deep breath, the freezing air filling my lungs. Then exhaled, letting go of everything old and heavy. Slowly, I placed the ceramic mug on the highest rock, its handle pointed toward the rising sun. I stood there for a long time, silent, letting the wind whip my jacket and the mountains whisper their wordless songs. There were no grand ceremonies, no dramatic declarations, just one simple act: letting go. Letting go of resentment, letting go of the why questions, letting go of the man who once tried to pull me down into his darkness. I turned around, my shoulders light, my heart even lighter. The old mug sat still among the rocks and the wind, a silent witness to the end of an old chapter. As I hiked back down, every step felt stronger, as if the earth itself was supporting my decision. At the base of the mountain, I paused once more, looking back at the peak where the little mug had become just a tiny gray speck against the vast blue sky. I smiled. I had left the past where it belonged, among the wide wilderness, where the wind would scatter the pain and time would bury the scars. From now on, only the future awaits me, full of hope and possibility. I got into my car, placed my hands on the steering wheel, and was ready to drive forward. No looking back. No regrets. No more burdens. Logan Harper's story is proof that the courage to recognize manipulation, the strength to face injustice, and the perseverance to overcome fear can open the door to an entirely new life. In reality, we all face times when we're trapped by the past or toxic people. But sometimes, a single brave choice, even a small one, can change everything. Freedom doesn't come from running away. It comes from standing tall, letting go of what weighs you down, and trusting the path you carve for yourself. What do you think about Logan's journey and the choices he made? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about life, family, and courage.